Hello and welcome to Witchy Wellness Radio. I'm your host, Loren Cellentani, women's holistic health coach and fellow recovering perfectionist. This podcast was created to show you that your body is not in the way, it is actually leading your way. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Happy New Year. This is your host, Loren Cellentani, and you're listening to episode 17 of Witchy Wellness Radio. And today we are talking to Dr. Hanisha Patel, a naturopathic doctor, and we discuss a wide range of things, but we mainly focus on the importance of a plant-based diet as well as how to cut out sugar cravings. So this month of Witchy Wellness Radio of January, I decided to get two ladies on here to talk more about diet, more about physical health than we typically do here on Witchy Wellness Radio, because it's important to feed your body the right nutrients and the right ingredients, the right food to heal. Because I know a lot of you have the New Year's, health resolution goals, whether that's to lose a certain amount of weight, to gain more muscle, to feel better, to have more energy. And I thought, what better way to have these women on here? And today we're talking to a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Hanisha Patel, on kind of more of the science behind all of our diets, the food we eat, and the importance of eating a healthy, well-balanced diet. But before we get any more into the interview or the topic today, I just wanted to take a second and say thank you for everybody for listening. We've almost been on the air for an entire year now, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to have your feedback for Witchy Wellness Radio. So if you have a few extra minutes, please head over to iTunes, submit a written review. I would love to hear what you think. It would really mean a lot from the bottom of my heart if you could do that. So jumping back into today's episode, we start off talking about how Hanisha decided to become a naturopathic doctor. And what does a naturopathic doctor actually do? What do they look like? How does this actually differ from traditional Western medicine doctors? And we discuss if you need help with your New Year's health goals or trying to heal your chronic health issues. We talk about how a plant-based diet and a sugar detox will help you both out tremendously. Discuss how symptoms are just simply messengers to the bigger picture of your entire health. The major difference between being a vegan or vegetarian and actually eating a plant-based diet. The importance of polyphenols and antioxidants in your diet. How to cut your sugar out of your diet or do a complete detox, becoming more aware of why you're eating and why you're craving things, the symptoms that scream for you to cut that sugar out of your diet, the link between sugar and digestion, and finally, what does it look like to work with a naturopath such as Dr. Hanisha. So without further ado, here's episode 17 with Dr. Hanisha Patel. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Witchy Wellness Radio. Loren here again, and today we have a naturopathic medical doctor, Dr. Hanisha Patel, on to talk about plant-based diets and sugar cravings. So welcome, Hanisha. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So just like any interview, I love to jump right into all of our interviewees' transformational stories, what led them to do what they do now. It's always so interesting hearing other people's stories and how we can learn and grow and heal through those stories. So if you wouldn't mind sharing that story, but maybe also kind of leading us into what does a naturopathic doctor actually do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have that question. So I definitely love to answer that. I'll start with what led me to this path, and then I'll explain what naturopathic medicine is.
Perfect.
Okay. So I did my undergraduate career at The Ohio State University, and I received my degree in pharmaceutical sciences, actually. And while I was learning pharmacology, I was very confused because I just learned that with every medication, there were multiple side effects, and then there was a medication for those side effects, and the cycle continued until each person was just on a myriad of medications. And with that, and talking to my professor about a lot of the monetary gains in the pharmaceutical industry, I started to wonder if this was the only way of practicing medicine. And so then I started to explore different things. I grew up Indian American, so I grew up with Ayurvedic medicine, which is ancient Indian medicine. And so I knew a lot of the remedies were helpful for me when I wasn't feeling great, but my parents didn't really understand why, and I was confused. So then I decided to go to India, and I also went to Guatemala and learned more about their traditional medicines. And when I came back to the States after that, I was like, I want to practice in a way where I can use herbal medicine and nutrition to help people get to the root of their illnesses. And so then when I spoke to, I was working with an optometrist at the time, and I told her about my passion, and she was from Seattle, and naturopathic medicine is all over the place in Seattle. Everyone knows naturopathic doctors there. And so she had a naturopathic doctor, and she told me about it. I read the principles and the therapeutic order, and I was like, this is it. This is what I need to do. And I didn't even look back at all. And I went to Bastyr in San Diego and got my naturopathic medical degree. That's my journey of how I got there. When it comes to naturopathic medicine in general, naturopathic medicine is a distinct primary healthcare profession that combines ancient wisdom of nature with the rigors of modern science. And so naturopathic doctors, we are actually trained as primary care providers who diagnose, treat, and manage patients with acute and chronic conditions. So we can do the whole system. We work with the whole person, attempting to find the underlying cause of the disease and by optimizing their health and preventing disease. And that's essentially what we do.
To put in layman's terms, my perception of naturopaths are, looking kind of more at the holistic picture, the person as a whole.
Exactly.
The underlying causes of all the disease or dis-ease in the body.
Exactly. Yeah. We're trying to find where that dis-ease is and getting to that root cause of the illness so that we can actually have true healing.
And since it is beginning of the new year, I know a lot of people are looking to maybe lose a certain, weight or get healthy again, or just feel that, vital life force through them. And, sometimes when we get stuck in these unhealthy ruts, they can lead to some chronic issues, but it all starts back with, what are you putting in your body, whether it's food, your thoughts, the people you surround yourself with. So I'd love to chat with you about plant-based diet and also how to curb sugar cravings, because I think those two alone are game changers for most people.
Definitely. I feel like even making small changes in your life can make drastic changes in your health, which is why our bodies are so amazing like that. Our physiology is working for constantly trying to fight for us. And a lot of our symptoms are just messengers. If we have symptoms of, constipation, like if we have those symptoms, it's like, okay, what is the problem in our body? Why do we have this symptom of constipation? Or if we have acne or whatever we have, these are messengers from our body, because our body is working to heal us constantly. It's trying to take care of us. And whenever we make these small changes, then we can see huge impacts in our health.
Speaking of plant-based diets, I feel like it's grown a lot. I've actually been vegetarian for probably 15 years.
Oh,
Gone in and
wow.
out of being healthy, not healthy, vegan, pescatarian to, somewhere in between
Mm-hmm.
now. I think a lot of people, it gets a bad rap because, Oreos are vegan and
Right,
you can eat
right.
unhealthy in any which way. Could you kind
Mm-hmm.
of chat to us about the healthy, holistic way to promote optimal health through a plant-based diet?
Yeah, definitely. So I think like that's the main clarification that I'd like to make, that is that there is a difference between being vegetarian or vegan and having a plant-based diet. Plant-based diet means you're mostly eating plants, right? So that's the idea behind it. So that's it's a lifestyle that where you're eating mostly vegetables, fruits, tubers, nuts, seeds, and legumes. And then you're minimizing your consumption. You don't necessarily need to completely eliminate meat, but you're minimizing the consumption of meat, because so much of, especially the meat that we have today, is very inflammatory. It's very processed, and it causes more inflammatory reactions in our body, leading to more of that disease that we discussed. But really, as a human race, we have been consuming a plant-based diet since the beginning of time. So whenever we put some of these additional things like the processed foods, processed bleached flours, refined sugars, refined oils, things like that, then we are actually going against what our bodies are used to. And that's why we end up getting things like chronic diseases like cardiovascular diseases or heart disease, because our body doesn't know what to do with this, because it's not the real food, that real fuel that we need. So yeah, so just kind of talking about that plant-based diet again, it's like focusing mostly on eating vegetables and fruits, but then you can have a little bit of meat or seafood or whatever. But one of my favorite quotes, actually, I don't know if you've heard this by Michael Pollan, is eat food, not too much, mostly plants. And I love that because it's so simple and to the point. And I think that's the main thing. It's like, it's okay if you want to eat an Oreo once in a while, but most of our diet should not be Oreos and cheese and crackers. We should be eating more vegetables and fruits, and then occasionally have the other foods.
Yeah, I think we get so caught up in, the labels of being vegan or, even paleo. And
Right.
I know Whole30 is really big right now too, but it is hard to maintain, especially like a Whole30 diet, 365 days of the year.
Right.
And
It is very difficult.
And I love what you said, and I completely agree. It's like, yeah, have the Oreo every once in a while. But going back to the quote is eat mostly plants. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hilarious for me because, I've been quite the like health nut for a while, but my family still doesn't understand what's gluten-free and what's not gluten-free. And
Mm-hmm.
and
Have the same problem.
yeah, and versus like grain-free, and it's confusing with
Mm-hmm.
all these labels. And like, in the 90s it was like low fat craze, and now it's low sugar craze, and it's like all these trendy things in the diet industry. But really,
Mm-hmm.
all we have to do is like, did this come from the ground? Yes or no?
Exactly.
Is it close to that form of when it was pulled from the ground or the earth?
Right.
That's a whole food plant-based diet. As simple as
Exactly.
that.
It's really that simple. But like you said, it's hard to incorporate 100% of that into your lifestyle, right? But yeah, it really is that simple. It's like, okay, the majority of what you eat should be coming from the ground, right? Should be coming from our soil. And I think, like, whenever you said your family gets confused, it's very similar for my family too. And my family is actually vegetarian. I was born and raised a vegetarian, but whenever I tell them that I don't eat gluten anymore, or even, other people that I know who are vegetarian, they're like, so what do you eat if you're a vegetarian and you don't eat gluten. And I'm like, vegetables? and, and it's just like such a crazy concept to so many people because they're like, I don't understand. And I'm like, it's vegetables. As a vegetarian, we should be eating vegetables, right? And that just goes back to what you said about how people get so confused with these labels.
Yeah. And it basically is eating this way, it gives your body the nutrients to heal. And
Exactly.
I think that's a fundamental belief of mine, but I know that, if you give a car, gas versus something else, it's going to drive. You can change the oil, do all these other maintenance things, but it needs to be fed the right type of gas. Exactly. Same with your body.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good segue into, I wanted to talk about polyphenols and antioxidants. And so polyphenols are actually secondary metabolites of plants that are that have all the micronutrients that we need. So the micronutrients are like the vitamins and minerals that are crucial for producing enzymes and hormones and other substances that we need to function, right? And so these polyphenols come from plants mostly. And that's why, that's exactly what you were saying is like, it's that fuel to help our bodies function optimally. And that's really all it takes. And so, and I'm sure, I mean, I don't know how much people know about antioxidants and polyphenols, but really the antioxidants are constantly working to fight off any stressors in our body. And they're protecting every cell in our body. They're protecting that mitochondria. And by protecting that mitochondria, they're able to fight off any bad things that or stressors that may come into our lives, like whether it's like a bacteria or, pollution, stress, lack of movement, even, which, those are all things that will lead to our cells being more stressed out and damaging our cells. But by eating more plant-based foods that have higher levels of polyphenols or antioxidants, we're able to fight off any of those negative things that come our way, which are constantly going to be coming our way, right?
Yeah, I think for me, when off chance I do get sick or, feel under the weather, maybe a flu or a cold, the first thing I do is go to plant-based, more plant-based. I start juicing, just juicing veggies, no fruit, cutting down that if there's gluten or sugar or anything else snuck in my diet, completely cutting it out. Because when you do that, especially when you're sick, you're starving out that virus, bacteria, whatever. Picture of this little bug, this cartoon bug, just dying because you're not feeding it anymore. Exactly. But you're feeding those antioxidants, like you were saying, is your body can and will defend you and protect you and and promote optimal health. But it always amazes me how people don't think that the diet correlates to that, to getting sick, whether it's chronically or maybe seasonal flu or even seasonal allergies. Because, for me, my histamine response when I used to eat gluten and dairy growing up, I would be congested and just have this constant nasal drip. And once I cut both those out, seasonal allergies were almost completely gone.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how much food it affects all of our health, right? It's not just our digestion that's affected by our food and what we eat. I actually had a similar experience. I've had chronic sinusitis, and as soon as I removed dairy, and I still eat dairy occasionally, but I remove it for the most part, and it completely changed everything. I rarely have any sinus issues. And I did recently over the holidays, I had a little bit more sugar and dairy and just and that's the thing. It's about the balance, right? Yeah. And I did have a little bit, but it was funny. I went to my friend's house and he had a cat, and I normally am allergic to cats, and I'd been there a few times and I never had any problems. But at this time of eating a little bit more sugar and dairy, I all of a sudden had a reaction. And it was fascinating how much of that histamine reaction was so correlated with what I had been eating. Like my body wasn't able to handle this stressor now that normally I was actually okay with. And found that fascinating.
And it is. And I think it's interesting that, once you start eating healthy and you feel that positive response reaction, and then, it's holiday time. I had my fill of sugar and gluten and a little dairy myself, but you know your limits. And it's not to like guilt people into eating healthy and or even to guilt yourself in or out of it, because I know I'm hard on myself. I used to be very strict. I didn't eat any sugar for 2.5 years, processed sugar. And you know what? That just took the fun out of life. Like, you have to be able to enjoy a nice piece of chocolate every once in a while, or, or a cookie or something, and just really savor it. But when you start to feel and see the reactions and those antioxidants and everything just kind of coming together and promoting better health for you, you won't want to go back to how you were eating before. It's amazing to me, even 5-10 years ago, what I used to eat every single day, and I thought I felt quote unquote fine or normal. If I ate that way today, I don't think I could make it past 3:30 in the afternoon. Like, I would just be so sluggish and bloated, and I would not be a joy to be around either.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely agree. It really is. It's once you experience that optimal health, it's hard to go back, because you know what good feels like. I know, like for me, gluten affects me so much that I have a lot of physical symptoms. And so when people are like, oh, just have like a little bit of bread or have just one slice of pizza or something, I'm like, I know that I feel so good right now that it's not even worth it, And so it doesn't matter to me. But then there are certain things where it's like dairy, I don't have as much of a reaction. And so then occasionally, I love ice cream. I grew up on ice cream and gelato. And so that's my one thing that I always like go back to occasionally. But just like, okay, just like 1 or 2 scoops of ice cream here and there. But yeah, it's like you said, you can't, like, stressing over what you're eating can be more of a stressor than actually having that food. It's what we talked about with how important your thoughts are. Your thoughts are just as important as your food that you're consuming. It's all connected. And that's why I don't call them cheat meals ever, because I feel like that adds like a negative connotation. So I actually call them treat meals. So it's a treat occasionally to have this food, and I feel I'm happy about it, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm happy with this food. This food is giving me energy as well, and I have positive emotions around my food no matter what. But of course, then there's the balance, making sure that most of the time, 80% of the time, I'm still eating fairly well. And then I have my treat meals, and that's what makes them treats, is because I don't get to have them all the time.
I love that, treat meals. I'm going to start saying that myself.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I feel like it really helps, because I especially those of us who are really into being healthy and taking care of our bodies, we can completely go on the extreme on that and stress out. And I remember I did the same thing. I was just so focused on it that I didn't feel satisfied with my life. Like I just felt like I was too ingrained in this process. Like I had to do everything perfect. And if I didn't, then everything was going to fall apart. And that's just not the way it is.
Yeah. And especially as, a practitioner or a teacher or now Instagrammer or blogger who's into this stuff, it puts another lens on it all, or I guess it amplifies it. And especially, talking to all you fellow perfectionists out there, overachievers, I know you're listening, that, it's like it becomes an eating disorder almost. I think
Right.
it's called orthorexia, where
Right.
you
Yes.
obsess over the perfection of having to eat the cleanest, greenest, meanest meal 100% of the time.
Right.
And when you're doing that, I don't care how much kale or how many antioxidants you're eating. Like, when your body is perpetually stuck in that fight and flight mode, the stress response, there's no way you're going to feel good. There's no way you can jump into your rest and restore. And, I know you can talk a lot about sugar cravings and hormonal issues and simple things, how to kind of curb those things. But that stems from your stress response, which can mess a slew of those things up. So kind of shifting gears here to focusing on those sugar cravings. What do you have to tell us all about that?
Yeah, I know myself. I have always had the biggest sweet tooth. My dad always has dessert with every meal, and I was always the same way. And so this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I really like to help people get over this because I know it's so hard for me. But some of the main things to do is eating more healthy fats and proteins with your meals, right? So healthy fats like avocados, coconut oil, avocado oil, walnut oil, sesame oil, all the oils, olive oils, but make sure they're unrefined, right? And making sure you're getting those healthy fats. Also like nuts and legumes, right? Nuts, almonds and walnuts are very high in both protein and fat. And so getting some of these things in your meal so that you don't necessarily want as much, because usually we crave sugar when we're really hungry and we want that quick insulin spike. And so it's about balancing out our insulin levels there so that there isn't a need for that spike. So I think that's what we kind of talked about with vegetarians. I think a lot of times that can be the problem. That's why vegetarians tend to eat more sugar, because they don't get as much like of a protein and fat content. And so I think that's the main thing is like getting those healthy fats and that good protein, whether it's, if it's vegetarian, then, getting those chickpeas, lentils, beans, things like that. Or if you're pescatarian, getting that wild caught salmon, shrimp, tuna, whatever it is, making sure you're getting that. And then if you're eating meat, then remember that it is a smaller portion of meat. We're not supposed to be eating all these huge burgers that we that we normally see in our standard American diet or the SAD diet. So making sure that even the quality of the meat is there, grass-fed beef and free-range chickens and free-range turkey, things like that. So that's I think that's the main thing, starting with that. And I know I have at least an avocado a day, maybe two. I just love avocados, and I know that whenever I don't have my avocados, I notice that I want more sugar. It's this immediate switch. I'm like, oh, now I want a cookie or chocolate or something, and I notice that difference. And so it really makes a huge difference. On top of that, what else? Things that I did originally. So I did like a full sugar cleanse, like you said, like that Whole30 diet. Like I've gone through that whole process. And I remember when I was going through it, I actually was, because sugar is so addictive, right? So it's very, very difficult. And so I actually started journaling when I would want sugar. And this really helped me because I would I'd be like, I just want this freaking cupcake right now so badly, and I can't have it. And I was like, so it was definitely a process. And I'm not even going to lie, there were a lot of curse words because it was a hard process. It was like getting over an addiction, right? And so I would journal it, but by journaling, I was able to release some of the emotions that I had around the sugar. And I think that is a really good way to just like let it go. Be like, oh, okay, I had this, I wanted this cupcake, and now it's out of my system. It's like it's kind of like tricking your mind into thinking you already got it in a way, but you didn't. And yeah. So does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. I love that you journaled, and you probably even like wrote out all of your profane language and cursing.
I really did.
I completely agree with that. And a lot of times we use sugar as that numbing behavior of,
Exactly.
I don't want to feel that emotion, or I don't want to think about that. And a lot of, my health coaching clients back in the day, where the moment you sit down from work or the moment you quote unquote try to relax, that's when you get slapped in the face with those cravings. It's like,
exactly.
The moment you actually can feel and think about what's going on, and you're like, it just came out of nowhere. No.
Right. Yeah,
No.
it really is.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, no, that is so true. And then on top of that, I feel like it's even more like whenever we say we can't have something, we want it even more, right? That's like that psychological phenomena. So when I tell myself that I can't have sugar, now I want it even more than even if I didn't care for it before. If maybe I didn't want the cookie before, but now that I told myself I can't, I want the cookie. Yeah.
I think there's an actual study. I forget. I'll look it up and I'll link it in the show notes. But there actually is a study that people who say I can't eat something versus I don't eat something. I want to know the statistics. I forget. But it was like a significant amount more who say I don't eat something. It actually, like, that resolution, that intention came true for a longer period of time than versus I can't eat something. Because you're right, like,
yeah,
just the wording of it is like I'm suffering or I'm a victim. I can't have that versus I just don't eat that. There's less attached to that.
Yes, and this just goes back to how much everything's so connected. Like your thoughts are so important around that. So yeah, I really like that, saying that I don't eat that, or saying I eat vegetables, I eat fruits, like saying the things that you do eat and like focusing around that will also help for sure.
So how would you know you need to do a sugar, detox, or maybe work with a practitioner like yourself, or, around cutting down the sugar? What are some symptoms that the body starts to kind of try to wake us up if we got too much spiked insulin, too much sugar in our diet?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that I hear quite often, and I definitely went through this before too, is when people say that they get hangry. That tells me that there's some insulin dysregulation. So there's some imbalances in your blood sugar there, because we should be able to fast for a certain amount of time without feeling any sort of negative impacts. I mean, our bodies were made to be able to fast and not actually able to. Our bodies are not made to be able to handle more food than we can handle. And this is why we have so much obesity and in our country, because now we're eating so much more and our body doesn't know what to do with all this extra food. And so then we make it fat. We turn it into fat. That's kind of like our mechanism to protect us. Like, I don't know what to do with this excess stuff. I'm just going to help protect us and create these fat cells. And so when we are more in balance, because if we think about how humans, I really love going into the evolution of humankind. And if we think about the way humans there would be so many days where we just go without food because there was nothing around, and so we should be able to fast. But if we can't, then that tells me that there's some blood sugar imbalance. And so that's one of the biggest things. Other things could be fatigue, or even migraines and headaches can occur with blood sugar dysregulation, and so and a lot of times if you're getting hungry every few hours and then you're eating something that's has a high glycemic index or just high in sugar, like a pastry or something. I used to do that all the time. I would just, I'd be like, oh, I'm hungry. And I would have a pastry and then I'd be hungry again within an hour. And that just shows me that it was just a quick insulin spike. And then it went away. And that's why I needed more food again. And whenever we eat, this is why I emphasize eating like a high protein, high fat diet in each meal. Whenever we're doing that, we're regulating our blood sugar. And that doesn't mean, so I feel like some people get confused. They're like, oh, high protein, high fat, so I should be keto or paleo or something like that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that in general, but it does not at all mean that you only eat meat and dairy, because that's the idea I think some people get with the keto diet. They're just eating meat and dairy all the time. Like, no, you're still supposed to be eating vegetables. That's still there. But just making sure that you have a balanced plate at every meal, and that will help regulate that blood sugar.
Even when we eat healthy, I know juicing and smoothies are kind of very trendy, and I had a smoothie every morning for years. But it's important, even when you're eating something like a lot of fruit in your diet, to balance that out too, like with healthy fats and healthy proteins, because that's going to slow down that glycemic, spike.
Right.
And look at the fruit you're eating too.
Right. Yeah.
Not all fruits create equal in terms of sugar.
Yes, definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
And fruits have the same impact. So if we were to, because I know whenever I started trying to eat healthier and trying to change my diet, instead of having a pastry, then I would just have an apple or banana or a fruit. And then I would have the same effects. Like I would still get hungry right away because I'm not actually sustaining myself, because fruits are the same. They're usually high in sugar. And I mean, yes, it is more natural sugars, and it's definitely better. But still, they're still high in sugar. So they still do lead to some level of that insulin spike as well. And so, so I completely agree. Just being careful about the fruits as well is very important. Our good cells are fed by these antioxidant rich foods. And it's the same thing with our bacteria. We have good bacteria and bad bacteria in our gut. And the bad bacteria loves sugar. They love sugar. And the bad fungi. So we have good fungi, good bacteria, and both the good ones don't feed off of the sugar. The bad ones do. And so that's why things like candida have become more common as well. A lot of people have candida because the sugar is feeding that fungi. And so it's definitely connected. Whenever we have this excess sugar in our diet, we start to change our microbiome, which is the microbiome is essentially just all of the bacteria. We have trillions of bacteria in our cells, in our body. And that's significantly more than human cells. And so whenever we're feeding the bad bacteria, they thrive off of that and they grow, and then they kill off our good guys. And our good guys can't protect us if the bad guys are taking over. And so what we need to do is kind of like what you said before, is starve off those bad guys, starve those bad bacteria from getting stronger and bigger. And when we starve them, our good bacteria, we're feeding them and they're able to help us out. And this bacteria in our gut can lead to, I know a lot of people notice with sugar or gluten or dairy or soy, even sometimes like more inflammatory foods, they get bloated with that. And that bloating feeling or that distension is literally a sign of the bad bacteria being fed.
That's so good to know, because there's it amazes me, the connection between your digestive system and the rest of your body and your emotional well-being, mental state.
Yes.
And sugar does really affect all of that. And
Yes,
when she's
definitely.
talking, I'm sure a lot of people know what candida means, but candida is basically, it's a yeast, and is would be the best way to say it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of women, been there myself, another symptom of too much sugar in your diet are yeast infections.
Yes.
And it's not fun. It's very common, but that's a big sign. You need to check your diet a little bit.
Definitely. I mean, it is also connected. Our gut is directly connected to our immune system, to our brain, to the skin, to our hormones. It's directly connected to all of these things. And when you talk about that mental health and how that's connected, it really is a balance. It's about having these positive thoughts, but then also feeding our gut proper nutrients so that it can produce the neurotransmitters to help our mental state as well. About 90% of our neurotransmitters are actually produced in our gut. And so that's affecting. So for example, serotonin is the happy hormone or happy neurotransmitter. And whenever we're low in serotonin, we can start to feel anxious or depressed. And if our gut isn't able to produce that serotonin, then we can have those symptoms of anxiety or depression as well. And so that's why it's so important to work on both ends. It's like working on your mind, but then also working on your gut. It's all connected. So it's so important to focus on all the aspects of health instead of just one part of it.
And it's never, it's a journey, it's a process. It's never one magic pill that's going to solve everything. It's like you said, it's taking the holistic picture and finding practitioners like yourself, surrounding yourself with other healthy people, whether being more positive or like-minded people, or people who are more active, or share similar interests in terms of their diet. That's going to help you feel supported, but also just reinstill that health and vibrancy in your life.
Yes, definitely. It really does take all of that. And like you said, finding someone to even guide you can be very beneficial. And I always tell all of my patients, it's like, you know your body better than anyone else. What I'm here to do is just to guide you and help you through your process. I'm not here to tell you what to do, and I'm not here to fix you, which I feel like some people think that's what the doctor's role is, but that's not at all our role. Our role is to guide you through your healing journey, but it's your journey, it's your body, it's your process.
Oh, I love that, because so many doctors in the Western medical profession are the exact opposite. And I think there's two things which you led to. People allow that to happen or think that's the way it should be. But also, I think sometimes doctors can fill that role themselves with their ego, which I love what you said about guiding people through their own health journey. And coming to somebody like you that has this huge body of knowledge who can help guide you and listen and suggest things that you should try, but also helping you to be more present and aware of what's going on in your body. You might be coming in for one thing that you don't feel good about, but realizing that there's other things that are leading into that and looking at it at a more holistic picture. And I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, that's where the healing occurs. So I wanted to kind of ask you, if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they go about doing that? Why would they, what kind of issues would someone come to work with you? And yeah, if you could just wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, definitely. People could come to me for a whole number of issues. Like I said, I do more primary care. So I don't do as much with acute care because I do see people virtually actually. So the platform that you can find me on is Modrn Med. It's a telemedicine company, and I do see people virtually there. Where I spend, so the first visit will be about an hour long, and we'll get to really know you. We're gonna really get to know each other. I'm gonna understand everything that's going on. Whatever your problem, maybe your chief complaint is, we'll talk about that. But then we'll also talk about your diet and stressors and stress relievers and exercise patterns and what your living environment is like, what your social support is like, all of these factors that affect our health. So we're going to get to that foundations of health and really get to know you first. And then after that, we'll work on your condition. So, going back to your question, like who would come to see me? I work with people with diabetes, heart diseases, heart disease like high cholesterol or hypertension, things like that. Also, I do a lot of work with women. I love working in women's health, helping with people with PCOS or Hashimoto's, hypothyroidism. And that's actually something I have that as well. And so I've been able to overcome a lot of those obstacles. So I feel very closely with that. And then I also really like working with people who are dealing with neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And just going into that real quick they found that 80% of people with Alzheimer's actually have some level of insulin resistance. And so this is just how connected everything is. And so they're actually starting to call both Alzheimer's and Parkinson's type 3 diabetes. And this is why I like focusing on helping people with their diabetes early on, because I don't want them to get to the level of getting something like that, or at least preventing it as much as possible. Because of course there's, that 20% where there are other causes and like genetics, but that leaves 80% there for actual possibility of improvement and not actually getting that condition. So I'm very passionate about that. And I really love working with people, and we've had a lot of success with at least stopping the progression of their disease. And it's definitely possible. And that's what makes me so happy and excited about it. And I love doing that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I love closing with just saying, thank you for providing us with so much value, wonderful information, and your time and your presence. And I just wanted to end asking if there's anything that the listeners can do or be a service for you. How can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. I know we talked about this a little bit before, but I love hearing about people's stories and their journey as well. So I would love for you to share your journey or what you're going through, or if you have questions about, what certain things that you can incorporate right now to start making some little changes at least, then I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to send me an email. I think you're going to provide that in the show notes.
Yep.
And or you can direct message me on Instagram and follow me there. Follow me on Instagram. I do talk about a lot of these different things that we discussed today, and I try to kind of bring it all together as much as possible. But I also talk about my own health journey, and so you could follow me through that process. And I would love to hear from you all. Yeah, and then if you have any questions or would like to work with me, then you can schedule a free consultation, and then we can go from there. I'd love to work with you, and I'd love to be a part of your healing journey.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And remember, open up, surrender, trust, and let your body lead the way.